Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about the murders that have occurred at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho. As we get rolling, take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure that you're getting all of our notifications for Profiling Evil. That way you can stay on top of the videos when we release them. Now, I'm doing things a little different. I used to have my computer sitting here. I had to move it here. And I just barely got off a plane and got home. So I might have to turn this way. You're going to see more of my bald head. And I guess I can't do much about that. But I want to take a moment and just shout out Michelle Morris. Great to see you. Debbie T. Thank you. Southern Sass. Great to see you. Dimples, Christy Dawson, Ruth Chidley, the Run the World, Shauna, thank you. Rebecca Morales, thank you. Says, send me a reminder I'm working. Okay, here's your reminder. I hope you're getting it. And to the early birds, thanks for jumping on. Tracy Rojas, iRoad, Cindy. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate all your support of Profiling Evil. I've been in Washington, D.C. this week, and I just barely got off a call with Court TV, and I thought it would just make sense for all of us to jump on together and talk a little bit about this murder case just a little more deeply. So again, I'm going to kind of try to watch your comments and respond as I can. And I got a bigger screen here so I can actually see. So anyway, we'll talk about this case a little bit and see what's going on. I hope you all are planning on Thanksgiving in the States and looking forward to being with loved ones, and that it's a peaceful time. Can you imagine these poor families that are having to deal with this thing right now? So in case any of you are not aware of the case, I'm going to quickly describe what we know at this point. And we'll pause. We'll play a little bit of video. I pulled some of the stuff off Court TV tonight, if you don't watch Court TV, and a few other things to kind of supplant and support some of the theory as we talk through that. So again, thanks to everyone for jumping on. It's so awesome to see you all. And I'm reading through the comments. It's really cool because most of you are shouting out to each other, and it's fun to see that you all are friends. So yeah, anyway. So here was the murders occurred just a few days ago, Sunday, November 13th, between about 2 o'clock in the morning and 12 o'clock noon. Now, I've heard a little bit suggesting that they probably had the murders occurring around 3 o'clock in the morning. And all I'm hearing that through the grapevine. Again, I've not heard anything substantiated, but we do know on the timeline that I'm going to share that the times are accurate. The timeline came together by placing the two sets of victims, one set who were at the university and attending a party, and the other set who were downtown at bars and hitting a food truck in the downtown Moscow area. And that was captured and streamed on video. So pretty eerie, thinking you could hear the voice and hear these kids talking just hours before they were murdered. Frankly, 1:45 was the last time the two victims were seen that were downtown, and they've been identified as Madison Mogan and Kaylee, and I hope I get this right, Goncalves. And these two, we believe, jumped into an Uber to ride home to their house. We don't believe that they were driving, based on what I've kind of uncovered as this thing has unfolded. So that's kind of interesting, because there have been crimes reported where the Uber driver had something to do with a crime that occurred. Sometimes they're setting up people. Other times they're actually perpetrators. And this is in no way an indictment on Uber, because there are just scummy people in every walk of life. The two other victims, Zana, I think it's Zana or Zana, Kernodle and Ethan Chapin, were at a party that was being held on campus. And the time that they got home, I haven't been able to find. So that's kind of interesting. So I want to just look here and see if any of you happen to know what time Ethan and Zana got home from the party that was at the school. So let me just look here for a moment. Seattle Ryan's asking if they have any idea who the killer is. They do not. Thanks. And by the way, folks, if you feel inclined, some of you are going to be mad because I asked this, but feel free to super chat. Those funds are always appreciated. And those of you who can't, don't sweat it. Don't make a big deal one way or another. Just do what you can do. And if you can't, it doesn't change things. We still look and try to read off questions here. So let's see. 5 p.m. Jen Lowe. I'm not sure if that's in response to me or someone else out there, so I don't know. But what we do know is that at 1:45, the girls were seen, and I don't know that we know. And this is going to be interesting because part of my theories are kind of circling around that couple that were at the party at the university. So let's see. I'm not seeing anyone shouting out that. I agree. No idea the time frame on that couple. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds as we get more information on it. But we know that 1:45, the girls leave, and sometime in the night, the other couple gets home. Here's what we do know. At around noon on Sunday, police received a 911 call that a person was unconscious at a home near the University of Idaho campus. And I've actually figured out the exact address where all this happened. I don't think it's appropriate to share that, but I will show you on a map the general area. And I guess if we zoom in and you know the area intimately, you'll be able to figure it out. But when police arrived, the responding officers found 4 homicide victims in what the coroner described as the worst crime scene she'd ever witnessed. So it was obviously horrendous. In fact, tonight, Vinny shared with me that he actually had seen some photos where there was blood actually draining out the doors. I mean, that is really grotesque, but an indication. 4 bodies who died by knife wounds would certainly have a lot of body fluid left on the floor. So let's see here. Tennessee Treasure Finder says there was a guy that was lurking around the girls at the food truck. He kept looking at his phone. Then he seemed to go a different direction than the girls went. So this will be kind of interesting because I'm actually going to play a little clip from that, and we'll chat about that. Dawn Marie, thanks so much. Folks, if you're not a member, please consider subscribing. We love growing, and we really love it when you share what we do with others. I don't get too sensational here, and I'm not probably very entertaining, but I do try to just talk to you and help you explore things. And holy cow, Seattle Ryan, I don't usually gift. Times are tough in Seattle, and Seattle is expensive. I appreciate your approach to cases and your carefulness with grieving families. And Seattle Ryan, I really do appreciate that, especially the fact that it's a little bit of a stretch for you. And Ether Bunny, you have jumped in so many times. Thank you. That $20 is amazing and deeply appreciated. It really kind of all of you. And this is going to be kind of fun tonight. I think we're going to explore some things and maybe learn a few things together. Like here, Glam Doll is saying motive. I feel it has to be sexual. Even if no sexual, the girls were the target. So this is really kind of interesting because one of the things that we learned and much of what I teach folks is just stuff I regurgitate from my mentors who taught me. And then, of course, 40 years of experience in the trenches certainly helps a little bit, but I give all the credit to those who taught me. I really appreciate what they did to help me. But here's something that's interesting. One of the things that we often said back whenever we taught criminal profiling, and I've taught criminal profiling all around the world, is that statistically, uh, all serial killers were sexual predators. All sexual predators do not necessarily become serial killers. So just a little something for you to tuck in the gee whiz or Mike's a nerd category and think about. So, interesting question here from SSS. Why was the call an unconscious person and not a very bloody crime scene? Hard to tell. And maybe not all of them were bloody, and maybe not all of them were together. The police have really kept this one close to the cuff on information. So, kind of interesting to see. Southern Sass says they may not. This may not mean anything, but in the video, I noticed a guy in the back. He puts his hoodie on, just lurking, and just caught me in a creepy way. So Southern Sass, I think you're right on. In fact, I went back, kept looking at the video, and hopefully that's what law enforcement is doing, is studying those videos. Kirby Dawson, wow, thank you. 10 bucks, and really thank you. Helps an awful lot. We and I have to give much of the credit to you. We were invited to the university last night to a special dinner with the university president. We have made substantial donations to train law enforcement, and it's been from money that we've gotten from folks like you and from the sale of books and other things. So gratefully, I have a day job and I have the money sufficient to take care of our needs from my job. And so we try to use this for good. And sometimes I go crazy, like this week, and I bought a better microphone. So sometimes I do kind of splurge on myself, and thank you so much for that. So let's see here. We've got to jump back into things, but I don't want to miss some of these comments, which are amazing. This is an interesting, Lindsay Comstock. The families are completely clueless about what's going on. This is really a tough thing for investigators, because an investigator's job is not to take care of the family. It's to be compassionate, and that's what crime victims advocates are for. The investigator's job is to figure out who murdered these people. And sometimes you need that separation to keep you from the emotion of the family. And I'll tell you, detectives have to at least monthly touch base with victims on these kinds of cases, at least in my experience. And those are gut-wrenching calls when you call and say, I don't have anything else I can share with you. And so please cut them a little bit of slack in that regard. But in the same light, for any cops that are listening, don't forget how important it is to still be compassionate and share and love these families who are suffering a great deal. So anyway, well, let's jump ahead for a second here. So during a press release, the press conference that was held, the police indicated that there were no signs of forced entry into the home. Now, this is huge. Now, there are some media reports that are suggesting that the door to the residence was open. But again, keep in mind that 6 people were living in this 3-story residence, and I am sure people were coming and going regularly. So leaving a door unlocked may not have been that peculiar, although you all know how I feel about the victim risk continuum. It certainly increases risk levels. But the bottom line from everything I've been able to read and listen to was that there was nothing to suggest that the door or windows were forced open in order to gain entry into that house. Now, one news report indicated that police told a reporter that there was also no attempt at a robbery in the home. I'm not sure where in the heck that thing comes from, but more importantly, I guess what it's based on, because um, that's a pretty big stretch. Now, there's nothing that suggests, though, that there was a burglary in progress and that they came into the home and this person had to kill them to get away with the burglary. In my opinion, it would appear that this is an intentional entry for the purpose of committing that homicide. So, so let's sneak back in here for a minute and just kind of see what folks are talking about as we go along. And I hope that you're liking this format where we kind of, I've never really done this too much, where I spend some time chatting and going through these. Michelle Lemon, thank you so darn much. I appreciate what you just did there, and thank you. I appreciate that you appreciate the work we're putting into things here. We really do try to do this the right way. Leslie from Oz, not sure what part of Oz you're in, but I'm going to be down there the first 2 weeks of December. Hope to do some shows while I'm traveling around. Going to be down there meeting with law enforcement, and also I'll take some time and do a little 60 minutes Australia program with Liz Hayes, and try to get another one of those on the books while I'm there. So again, Michelle, thank you. And Ether Bunny, thank you again for jumping in there. So let's see. Southern Sass again says, do you think it was someone they knew? Yeah, let's talk about that in just a minute. And we'll kind of explore that and see. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the mayor, not particularly this comment that it's safe in the community, but maybe that really goofy comment that he made about who may have caused this murder. And for Mary B in Queensland, yeah, I'll be heading up the Gulf Coast and making my way, spending a couple of days in Brisbane to meet with Queensland police and a few others. So it'll be nice. Maybe we'll bump into each other at a store. I know there's this really good little Nando's downtown Brisbane that I like to go to. So maybe we can bump into each other down there when I'm getting that peri chicken or whatever they call it. So anyway, okay. What's scary is they haven't caught the person who killed those kids. Amen. Well, most importantly, police right now are indicating that there are no suspects in the case. Now, I think there was a little bit of a misstep. Police initially said there was no threat in the community, and everybody pushed back on that. And now the police chief is walking back that comment and now is indicating, yeah, everybody needs to remain vigilant in this particular event. Well, tonight I appeared on Court TV with Vinnie Politan and a reporter out of Boise, Idaho, who's been covering this story. During our discussion, we covered a lot of the things that you're actually chatting about here, but during the conversation, Vinnie asked me what my impression was regarding the things that were happening around the community at this time. And I thought I'd just start off with some of those comments. So let's jump into that.
Mike, how would you assess the current threat, either in that area, at that school, on that campus?
Yeah, I think you've got to take this serious. You've got to remind people that they are responsible for the level of risk that they're willing to take into their lives, going out late at night, traveling alone, walking out of the mall alone at after dark. Vinny, take advantage of the school's security system that the university has increased the number of officers on duty now. It sounds like escorts are available to get people to and from their vehicles, but that doesn't change in daily life. We ought to be really looking at how much risk we take when we decide, oh, I know it's dark and I know there's a group of people over there or there's a suspicious looking car, but I don't want to sound stupid, so I'm going to just go and hope I get to my car in time. These things are really, really serious. And the police department, they may have stumbled a little bit in the beginning when they said there's not a threat to the community. Holy cow, if you haven't arrested somebody and they're saying he or this, that they're making this singular in nature, it sounds like they know that there's somebody that was responsible for this act, but they don't know who it is because they haven't made the arrest, or they haven't found them at least.
And Mike, if they knew who it was and they were trying to find that person, would they tell the public, or would there be a reason to withhold that? If they knew who they're looking for, is there ever a reason to withhold that information while you're searching for this person?
Man, what an incredibly difficult balance beam that is, isn't it? I mean, you have this interest in saving and protecting the public and alerting them and bringing this predator to justice as quickly as you can. So one side of the fence would say, absolutely, you say, we're looking for this individual. This is the kind of car we last knew them driving in. Here's where they frequent. But when you do some of those things, you put at risk the chance to gather maybe some forensics evidence or follow and watch them in patterns they're doing. But we're not looking for missing bodies here, Vinny. We're looking for a suspect that committed 4 homicides or multiple suspects, and you got to get them off the street as fast as you can. Holy cow, folks. Thanks so much. I'm so sorry. I'll go back and fix this after. Yep, there we go. So I'll start over. At first, police, they were indicating that the victims died from a bladed instrument, and that prompted all kinds of conspiracy theories about what could have happened. But it didn't take police long until they released their findings that the weapon was in fact a knife, and that the wounds were stab wounds or cutting wounds. And I'm going to go to a little more of Vinny and my discussion in that regard. But yeah, in fact, I'm going to go right here to Charlene's. Oh, let's see. Yeah, that's Charlene. But no, I got here it is. Trish Norman called me on it. You had one job, Mike, and you blew it. Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you. How can I not just let you all call me and put me down on the carpet here? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you all don't cut me any slack, because you know you're with friends when they're willing to harass you a little bit. So so hopefully give me some thumbs up if you actually have sound now. Oh, there's Natalie, we can hear. So yes, this could be like a spiritual revival. Now people are hearing when they couldn't hear before. But here we go. Well, let's jump into my comments with Vinny about that knife, because again, that knife is going to play in really important to this thing, and I think it's going to tell us a whole batch more than anybody's sharing and talking about. In fact, think about what I always say. There's more value in what's not being said than what necessarily is being said. Let's jump back into this.
All right, Mike, the fact that investigators are asking about specific types of knives, these military type knives, what does that tell you about the information that they've been able to gather here, even though they haven't found the weapon?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that something to say we're looking for a K-bar knife and defining exactly what that weapon is? What gave them that information to say that's the weapon we're looking for? Enough to go to stores and say, do you sell this particular weapon? And thankfully, if they do know this piece of information, they're going to go back and be able to go to distributors and find out what locations do sell that kind of a weapon.
Now, I want to stop here for a moment because a couple of you have actually thrown some questions out about that knife. And this is a question that nobody's asking. Is it possible that that knife originated at the scene and actually belonged to one of the victims that frequent that house? And again, this is where investigators and we in the true crime community can get tunnel vision and spend a whole lot of time doing things like running down to the stores and checking out who sells that knife, when all they had to do is maybe ask questions of the family of, does your son have a knife, or did your daughter have a knife? Again, lot of interesting questions there. Let's jump back into this.
I suspect that this weapon has been in the possession of the killer for some time before this event, and that it's going to be a pretty long shot to find video footage of them just picking it up the night of the murder or the day before.
Okay, so I mean, what do you think about what my comment was just a moment ago? What's the possibility that that knife actually originated in the home and the predator took advantage of it? Now, I think that's less likely, quite frankly, because I do believe that someone went in there and fantasized and planned this thing out. We're going to talk a little bit about whether he fantasized about killing 4 people or maybe just one and things got out of hand. But let's see what you got going on here. Let's see. It is a hunting area, though. Amber is right. Type of knife is common with hunters. Jen Lowe, I gotta put that here and say thank you so much for putting that up. And also Red Rock. Yeah, hopefully, folks, you're hitting the subscribe button and joining up with us. And really appreciate all of you being here. Let's see. The autopsy is complete. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. I think this is kind of an interesting one from Earthling. I think it's entirely plausible, especially in a house that large, for the roomies to sleep through it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Question, did they find a knife as of this moment? Unless somebody tells me differently, I don't believe they have found a knife. So I'll watch and see if any of you happen to have something new that I didn't know about. We're going to talk about the layout of the house, Miss Marple, and we'll show actually some video of that. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see if some of you are right when it's all said and done. Let's see. Oh, here we go. We got somebody from Mama Storm DRD from Moscow. Knives are frequently sold at the booth at the local fair. Last fair was late September. Really interesting. And we're so sorry your community is going through this. That has got to be quite an interesting time for all of you. And if you have anything that you can comfortably share, please put it in the chat and let's try to talk about it. So I have not heard this specifically said, Diane, that all were killed by the same knife, although it certainly makes sense, which again is something I'm going to explore in a minute here, because you got to think about how that's possible. So, okie doke. So great to see you all chatting back and forth. Thank you. Jen Lowe, do you think it's possible the perpetrator could have hurt himself with the knife? And yes, absolutely possible. In fact, that's one of the things I bring out later in the discussions with Vinny. Is it's going to be interesting to see if there are defensive wounds on the victims, and that if there is any other blood that's recovered at the scene that is not tied to the victims in this case. So, interesting. And I don't know the answer to this question, Seattle Ryan, and maybe somebody else does, but the police are not releasing that at this point. So, not sure. So, Vinny and I, though, we did spend a little time again talking about these theories around the blade and all of that. Now, police are indicating that the autopsies have been completed, and they have indicated that that's going to be up to the state police and the medical examiner. So state police have now come in. They have FBI helping out to some degree. Again, keep in mind that this location, we're going to look at it on a map in just a moment, is very close to the Washington state border. So very easily someone could bounce from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But the autopsy reports, in my opinion, are going to be incredibly important. And they're really going to reveal more about this offender than any of us can believe at this point. So let's listen to a little news report where they talk about the autopsy, and then we'll talk a little bit about a couple of other things here.
Breaking into our newsroom tonight, the autopsies of the 4 University of Idaho students killed just days ago were completed within the last 2 hours. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Krempton News 10 at 10, where you get more news in less time. I'm Mark Hanrahan. The official report detailing their findings and their recommendations has been sent to the Latah County coroner. That coroner will be the one to make the official ruling on cause and manner of death. The 4 students were 20-year-old Ethan Chapin, a freshman from Conway, Washington.
Thank you so much, Robin McCann.
A junior from Post Falls, and 21-year-old Madison Mogan, a senior
2015,
from Coeur d'Alene.
isn't that
Vanna
something?
and
7
Madison
years.
worked together at a restaurant in downtown Moscow. The 4th victim, 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, was a senior from Rathdrum, Idaho. She was a sorority member and had already lined up a job for after graduation. The Moscow police chief addressed the media for the first time today. He answered some of our questions about the case. Chief James Fry said all 4 victims were stabbed to death. The weapon has not been recovered. He said there were no signs of forced entry into the home, and at this point, they do not have a suspect. And because of that, he said it is possible there still is a threat to the community, and he urged students and the community to be vigilant and aware of their surroundings.
So somebody made a comment earlier about the smell of blood, and it's actually one of the nightmares I still have as a result of investigating homicides for a lot of years. And it wasn't necessarily the smell, but I remember after I had a suicide that was incredibly gory, and I didn't think much about what was going on. But about a month later, I went in on a murder where a woman had murdered her girlfriend, and when I walked into the house, I could taste the iron in my blood. There was so much blood that the air and the humidity, I could taste the iron. And to this day, if I ever get a tinge of that, like a little bit of a bloody nose or something, I have flashbacks to that. You probably didn't care to hear all that. So anyway, now listen, I'm going to play the press conference and the questions and answers by the media at the end of the video for those of you who want to hear the entire thing. And they kind of reference it there in that. I think it will be worth listening to, and we'll explore that at the end. But I'm going to pause right now for a news story that was on the Today Show about this new information coming out, specifically about the other people who were in the home at the same time that these murders were occurring. So let's jump into that and catch that little segment.
Learning about another strange detail in this case. Police are now telling us 2 other roommates were home during that violent attack, but were not injured in any way. We also now know police were not called for hours after the murder took place. This morning, a new message from police in Idaho after the gruesome murders of 4 students.
We cannot say that there's no threat to the community. And as we have stated, please stay vigilant.
That's after police said in a statement on Tuesday, investigators believe this was an isolated, targeted attack, and there is no imminent threat to the community at large. Authorities do still believe the close friends were targeted.
We believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there.
Police still searching for the murder weapon.
The 4 were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time.
They say there were no signs of forced entry at the home where the bodies of Kaylee Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Xana's boyfriend Ethan Chapin were found. And now police revealing for the first time that 2 other roommates were home at the time of the attack but were not injured.
There was other people home at that time, but we're not just focusing just on them, we're focusing on everybody that may be coming and going.
The 2 others have not been identified, and there are no details about what they might have seen or why it took so long to alert police. The victims had been found on Sunday afternoon by officers responding to a 911 call about an unconscious individual, but investigators say they think the 4 were killed early in the morning after going out. Xana and Ethan returning from a party on campus, and Kaylee and Maddie from a bar downtown.
Cool. Thank you.
Police are also aware of this video that they say appears to show 2 of the victims ordering from a food truck, saying it could help them establish a timeline of events that night. The president of the University of Idaho, emotional.
They were bright lights in our community and are deeply missed and remain in our thoughts and our prayers.
If everybody was like Ethan Chapin in this world, it would be a better place.
The victims' families struggling to cope with their sudden and shocking loss.
I can't wrap my head around what Thanksgiving looks like, or Christmas looks like, or even like my day-to-day looks like.
And again, with no suspect in custody, police are cautioning people to be aware of their surroundings. They're also asking the public for help with any information that could help them find this killer and solve this case. Back.
So I want to kind of show a couple of little clips that might be kind of interesting to you. But Vinny and I spent some time tonight again talking about who the potential suspects might be in this case. And I don't know if any of you followed the words of the mayor. He said these homicides were a crime of passion. Personally, I didn't care much for that characterization. And I kind of spouted off a little bit. And so I apologize to the mayor. But I'll read your comments about what I had to say about that.
So, Mike, how much of a challenge is this? I mean, because I would think that it could be someone who lives locally, could be someone who is passing through, could be someone connected to the victims, could be a random student. How difficult is it when you have a university and you have a population that's there and then can disperse at any time, go back home?
Yeah, and that the university is located at a crossroads heading east, west, north.
Excellent point, around
west,
the world.
North and south primarily. So it has arteries that are bringing a lot of folks through. There are 2 major highways that kind of split the downtown region, and we know that 2 of these kids were at a bar downtown, and I looked online, and there are a batch of bars down between those 2 highway systems through that section of town. So you have to think about the victimology. But the one thing we know about victimology, and we've talked about it a bunch of times, Vinny, is that while we might say somebody who's low risk is generally hurt by somebody known to them, once they step out of that zone and start doing changing their environment or their circumstance, going out and partying all night, driving around, going to food trucks in the early morning hours, and this certainly isn't victim shaming. These kids did not deserve this.
They did exactly what we all did.
Yeah, exactly. But when you change that, you change your risk level, and that changes us from being targeted to being victims of opportunity. So that's why things like what happened in that homicide, what kind of wounds are on these victims, whether they're defensive wounds or otherwise, and I think we'll probably get into some of that, but that's what's really going to start bringing this thing together.
All right, our guest, Sally Krutzig from the Idaho Statesman, Mike King, staying with us. We're going to take you inside that murder house coming up. But first, coming up next hour.
Hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. I've talked about cybersecurity before, and I've offered a new tool called Aura for you. 14 days for free to give it a try. You can go online, get the link down below, and you can sign up. But here's the deal, it's really special. The holiday season's approaching fast, and you're going to be doing all your Black Friday surfing online and purchasing stuff. Don't put yourself at risk. I don't. And here's a deal that Aura has offered for me to give to you. That is 60% off if you choose to sign up for Aura. Remember, you can go over and get it for free for 2 weeks and try it out. What do you got to lose? Hey, thanks, and let's get back to the show. Okay, well, thanks for that gratuitous opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about the video that was captured. You know, we spent quite a bit of time talking about what we do know in the case. Let's just take a minute and first look at a map and explore the area a little bit further to kind of help you geographically put 2 and 2 together. So let me pop this map up, and we'll just zoom into the area and look at this case a little more closely. So if you think about the little panhandle on Idaho, running up to the north, this area of Moscow, Idaho is right on the border between Washington and Idaho, just below Spokane. And as we go in a little, what I've done is, you can see here, I've indicated where all the cell towers are in the area, because I always like to know what the possibility is that law enforcement is going to be able to track these offenders and, frankly, the victims from a forensic standpoint. But here's what we do know. This is the University of Idaho, and the campus. I mean, this community is only 25,000 people, but here's the location where the kids lived, and I just genericized it to 1100 King Road. If you look online, you'd be able to find out exactly the address. And as we zoom in, we can kind of see the location. But it's just a ton of student housing, off-campus areas of parking. I thought it was quite interesting because we know that 2 of the kids went to the university to a party, and 2 of the kids went into town to a bar. So I thought it'd be just kind of interesting to show you what some of those driving routes would look like first and foremost. So if they were to just drive from school or from their home to the school, this thing's less than a half a mile away. I mean, it's 0.7 of a mile, so a little bit more than a half a mile. Again, what we're hearing is that they took an Uber. But if the other couple actually, the girls were downtown drinking, there were bars all through this area, or establishments that sell alcohol, that I could find when I looked online between the highway and Troy Road here. But again, that doesn't really leave a whole bunch of options from getting from point A to point B. You can take some back roads and work your way through. And sometimes if somebody's drunk, they might do that, take a back road and try to work their way around. But it really is pretty insignificant. 7-minute drive on the long end, here 10 minutes, or a direct route, again, somewhere around 7 miles or 7 minutes to get from point A to point B. The area, again, when you start looking at it, zoomed in on the map and look at the aerial imagery, this is just a cute little town. So you might want to go back and spend a little time and look at that and see if there's anything that's significant to you. To me, quite frankly, there wasn't. I mean, we can go in and we can start storyboarding some things out and talk about, some of the areas. Now the campus actually extends, in kind of a long way down here and back, if I saw the campus correctly. And again, those bars are kind of spread through this area here, but there are there are bars down in this area, one or two. So who knows where they went? But anyway, I hope that's helpful. And y'all know that I love maps, so I always have to stick a map in to kind of talk about things. But here are a couple of things that we absolutely know at this time. Based on what police are saying, we absolutely know that they don't know who the suspect is. So we assume that they're telling the truth when they say that they don't know who the suspect is. I don't like the fact that they're refining this down to a single predator when they're openly suggesting that they don't know who the predator is. I mean, there could be multiple predators, but there certainly would be evidence to support if there were multiple predators that took part in the slaying of these victims. So that's going to be kind of interesting. We also know that they believe there was a single person, and that single person was using a K-bar knife. That's really significant to me, and I don't know where it's coming from and why the police are saying it, but we can chalk it up to one of those things that we know right now. And we know this. We know that there were two other roommates in the home at the time of the murder, and they weren't hurt. What we don't know is why weren't they hurt? Why weren't they able to hear what was going on? And this, of course, leads me and many of you, as I'm reading through these, to speculate further about what happened in the course of those homicides. I mean, was there a single intended victim and all the others simply got in the way and the killer had to silence them? Or perhaps it was a 2 and 2. The girls came home, a predator killed the girls. In the course of committing those homicides, the other two victims walked in the door and had to be killed as well. Is it possible they stumbled onto a burglary in progress and the offender, instead of running out the door, killed everyone? It's possible, but I don't think it's probable based on what we're learning. And frankly, how did this offender get control of 4 people? We don't know if there were signs of an attempt to escape or fight, or if these victims died in their beds. And maybe some of you are hearing, especially locally, some things that the rest of us are not. But here's some great video from the food truck streaming, and I want you to watch it. And many of you are asking, is it possible somebody is in the wings watching them? Let's see. Now, there's audio if you go online. I just decided not to put it on here and just to stick this in here. But again, kind of interesting. Everything looks pretty casual, and everybody looks pretty casual. And frankly, in a town this small, and the way everyone was acting like they knew each other, they're going to be able to identify quickly who everyone is that's at that place, including if they in fact did get an Uber ride, who the Uber driver was. Jeannie Nash, thank you so much for that donation. That's really helpful. We do not know so many darn things, but let's see what else we've got here. Gene's Panic is saying, I wonder if there was more than one killer and they were hiding in the house waiting to do the killings. Boy, yeah, all of those questions, it's just so hard to know what to think on that. So here's an interesting question. Magali R says, can you define crime of passion? So there's a defense, and Michelle may jump in and clean up my language here as I define this, but crime of passion kind of fits the old devil made me do it kind of thing. I was confronted by someone and they did something that was so offensive. They called my brother a foul name, and I was so angry without even thinking that I punched him in the face. And so you can charge me with assault, but you need to understand the devil made me do it. I mean, it was just a response. It was a passionate kind of thing. Now you can aggravate that in many ways, that a predator could turn on someone who he had been in a domestic relationship, or she had been in a domestic relationship and been jaded, and they decide to inflict some kind of damage. Think about when you yourself have been a little bit angry about something, and you've said something that you were absolutely sure was going to really taste good when it came off of your tongue. And as soon as you said it, you thought to yourself, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. Well, that's a moment of passion, a heat of passion. So that's really kind of what it boils around. And I'm going to just see, call me out, Michelle, if legally you'd like to describe that a little differently. But we see these crimes of passion, and we see the aggravation in them. Oftentimes, like when we see really focused assaults on the face or other things, it really gives us an idea of what the emotion is. And you think about it, we have these things, this form of communication that we all take part in. We have verbal, nonverbal, and sexual communication. And so I could say to one of you, if we had a camera on you, I want you to act out like you're mad without saying a word. And you might pull a mean face, or you might grit your teeth. That's a nonverbal communication. Verbally, you might say something. People, when they act out in sexual crimes, they communicate through sexual things. So all of that just becomes passion, becomes a form of behaviors that we study in these kinds of cases. Now, I want to jump in and look at, here we go. Michelle, let's see what she said. Very nice, Mike. So there's a big difference between spontaneous reaction crime of passion versus passionately personal. Yeah. And I hope I made that clear, but thank you so much for clarifying that. Yeah. You scared me and I punched you. That's not a crime of passion, but you called my brother a son of a gun and I punched you would be a crime of passion. And I then take someone that I've been really angry at for years, and I finally have had enough, and I meet him in an alley and I beat him. That's a different form of a crime of passion. So hopefully that kind of helps through all of that. So let's see. Thank you, Marianne. Appreciate that. Be sure to like, folks. We do like the likes. Now, in this video of the layout of the home, I want you just to pay kind of close attention. Vinny and Sally and I talked about those modes of transportation, the home's layout. And again, this is the interior of the home from a for sale period. Some of you mentioned the sliding door. I actually mentioned it in the video that comes up. I don't know if there's a backdoor entry and a basement entry, but again, there are 3 floors, 2 bedrooms, and a single bath on each of the 3 floors. So every 2 rooms share a bath. And that kind of gives you a sense of what that looked like. So we'll just go right into a court TV segment after we talk about this, where we kind of talk about it in a little more detail, especially about why the residents that were in the home weren't murdered, or why they didn't hear what happened. So let's go into that here, and I believe it's right up next.
Let's bring back in our guests, Sally Kruzig, Idaho Statesman reporter, Mike King, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil on YouTube. Sally, do we know if Kaylee and Madison walked or drove from the food trucks back to the house that night?
So we have not had police confirmation of this, but Kaylee's sister has publicly said that they Ubered. They took an Uber to the bar went to a food truck downtown, and then took an Uber to their home.
And that would make sense because I think in that food truck video, you see them checking their phone. So if your Uber shows up, you're gonna check your phone, and then you know when it's here. Let me ask you, Mike King, you saw the description of the house. We took you inside. 3 levels. Does that make it more possible that 2 people could have slept through a quadruple murder inside the home?
So we start thinking about the multiple entries that are into the home. Look like sliding glass doors in some rooms, whether there's a back door and a front door. Certainly 3 floors, you can get some separation. And again, you think about this, college kids, and some are playing music, others are listening on their iPods and zoning out and not hearing what's going on. Some may just flat be asleep. This is different than a gunshot homicide. This is again, it's going to boil down to whether this was a horrid, aggressive, violent, multiple stab wounds kind of a thing, and I hate to be too grotesque, or was it more of an execution in each of these murders? And so that could lend one way or another whether someone was able to hear or not. But I'm not too concerned that there actually were people inside the home that didn't hear something, Vinny. It took them until noon the next day to go check on their friends and say, hey, are you going wherever we're going, and make the discovery.
Well, so our conversation kind of continued, but it was winding down. And if you're getting tired, folks, I'm kind of winding down. But Vinny asked my thoughts about crime of passion. You guys have asked about that. But most importantly, the comment crime of passion by the mayor. And I think I made it pretty darn clear earlier that I wasn't too impressed with that characterization. But I added these kinds of thoughts into the video.
Is that, I mean, Mike, when you say crime of passion, that has a meaning. I mean, there's an attachment to it, and it would become a big part of the investigation. Is it possible investigators would speak quickly with the mayor, and then all of a sudden the mayor slipped something out that he shouldn't have slipped out? Or do you think the mayor was just speaking out of turn?
It feels like the mayor didn't know how to verbalize this horrific event, and that came to mind. If this were a crime of passion, it would most likely be focused on one individual. That means that 3 additional people just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the bad guy who's involved in this passionate murder couldn't get out without executing others. It makes you worry a whole lot more about what fantasies are going on in the predator's mind in this particular case, Vinny, that it was more systematic in nature. And holy cow.
When you say systematic, do you mean that they would have to be sleeping, or they would be in such a position that, like, they're afraid to move because he's threatening to do something and then acts quickly?
Yeah, I think we have to consider that. We have to consider that he gains control of at least 2, maybe 2 come home at a later time because we know they split up, but that somehow he gains control. And I'm saying he because the police and others have indicated the he. We don't know who it is, but that he gains control of them in some way. And I'll tell you, that control could be very easy. Listen, I'm going to just tie you up and gag you so that I can steal something. And normal people like you and me are thinking, do whatever you got to do and get out of my house. But then once he's got control, he can do it in any method and manner that he wants to do. And that's what's so frightening about these things. So you go back to, it really is going to play out to see what's learned in the autopsy, see the manner and the method of those executions. And that's going to tell us what the fantasy of this predator was, which I think will help identify who it is.
All right, Mike King, Profiling Evil podcast. Great to have you on tonight. Appreciate your time and insight.
That Vinny is such a good guy and so kind to me, and I really appreciate the chance. I don't know, folks, if you don't subscribe to Court TV, please do. And please watch for me. I make usually about 1 or 2 appearances a week, depending on the crime, and they just are all so darn good to me. So thank you. Sedona Skies, thank you for that kind donation. Really helps, and really appreciate it. And Deb Jackson Smith, thank you. Appreciate that, and appreciate all of you. I appreciate the questions that have been coming in tonight. I think we're having some really good discussion. Alexis, how do you say your last name there, Alexis? Is it Zervanak? Anyway, let me know sometimes. Spell it out phonetically for me. College students always sleep late, especially on weekends. Noon doesn't seem surprising to me. I slept from grad school until I had no choice. Well, amen. I think that when you are in school, I know that getting up every morning was awfully hard. I was working a graveyard shift in a psych unit and then going to school all day and sleeping in the afternoons. So does that tell you a little bit about me? I was working in a psychiatric unit all through college. Help me as I learned. And Run the World, thank you so much. I hope you have a great night as well. And if you want, come back in the recording, Run the World, and listen to the press conference where you might get a little more information. So here's the deal, folks. What are your thoughts on this one? And I want you to put your comments in here. And if you're watching later on this thing, put them down below. But I got a couple of questions. Do you think that this was a crime of opportunity, or was it a targeted attack? Think about the victimology. Go back and watch those videos on victimology if you need to. Now, if your answer is that it was a targeted attack, were all of these kids the intended victim, or did something happen and the offender just kept killing and killing and killing? And finally, what would you be doing if you were our listener who's living in Moscow, Idaho right now, especially if you had a kid up at the university or wandering around on the streets? What kind of advice would you give your children or someone that you really cared about to help them learn from this kind of a tragedy? And I want you to think about that victim risk continuum. Go and watch the victim risk continuum if you haven't. And I want to thank you all for listening today. I hope you hit that like and subscribe button, and I hope you're considering our channel memberships. But here's the biggie. With the Christmas season coming so quickly, think about that Aura. Could be a pretty cool gift to give people some cyber security protection for Christmas. And you get a great discount right now, 60% off, or consider our merchandise and our books. And again, I think you'd like She Knew No Fear, story of my great-great-grandmother who was murdered in 1891 and what it took for me to solve her murder 130 years later. Or Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, which talks about rescuing 32 children from a ritualistic cult that committed more than 4,000 rapes of children by the time we were able to put all of the predators, 12 of them, in prison. And all the proceeds from that go to build a new Children's Justice Center, a place where children can be forensically examined, prepared for the court system, receive medical care, and hopefully walk out the back door with a whole lot more tool sets to live life. So now I want to play the press conference for anybody who'd like to hang around and listen to it. And I've cut out all the backslapping and got right to the crux of the investigation and the important parts and the questions that come in by the press. So it should move pretty quickly. And frankly, I think it's a great time to just see you all chatting with each other. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene. Let's jump into this.
My name is Chief James Fry with the Moscow Police Department. I'm going to be reading from my notes today because I want the information you receive to be extremely accurate. We know you have questions, and so do we. That is why we're here. This horrible crime has affected all of us, the families, the University of Idaho, our community, our country, and our officers. As we continue our investigation, we have learned that Ethan and Xana were at a party on campus, and Madison and Kaylee were at a downtown bar. They arrived home sometime after 1:45. If anyone in our community or across our nation has any information about these times or the victim's whereabouts, please call our tip line at 208-883-7180. The facts of the case that we know right now. We know that these homicides occurred in the early morning hours of Sunday, November 13th. Around noon, Moscow officers received a call of an unconscious person. Officers discovered the bodies of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Goncalves inside the residence on King Road. The four were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time. There was no sign of forced entry into the residence. Investigators are continuing to collect evidence at the scene. Investigators are working to develop a timeline to relevant events. Autopsies are taking place today on all the victims so we can continue to gather evidence and solve the crime. Investigators are working to follow up on all leads and to identify a person of interest. Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there's no threat to the community, and as we have stated, please stay vigilant, report any suspicious activity, and be aware of your surroundings at all times. What we don't know, the identity and location of the suspect, the location of the knife or any clothing that was worn by the suspect. Currently, we have 25 plus investigators working this case, as well as assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Idaho State Police. We're reviewing video that has been collected, but we are asking citizens to contact us with any information you may have that will help in this investigation. Once again, we're asking anyone with a to call the tip line at 208-883-7180.
I'm Amanda Rowley with Creme 2 News. You mentioned that there's an indication that it's an isolated, targeted incident, and there is an individual somewhere. Can you give us a reason as to why there's that belief there is a suspect? Can you also give a little more information on the forced entry? There's no sign of forced entry, but was the door, did it seem like any of the entries were left unlocked by any means?
I'll answer the last part there just because it's at the front end of my mind. We're not 100% sure if the door was unlocked, but there was no damage to anything and the door was still open when we got there.
You asked for videos or anything from the community to help put together that timeline. We obtained a copy of Twitch video, and family members of the Gonsalves family were able to identify Maddie and Kaylee in those videos at a food truck ordering food. Is the police department, our investigators, aware of that video, and has it helped put together that timeline?
We are aware of that video, and it has helped. It gives us a time and space where we know that two of our victims were, and that helps us a ton, and we'll continue to follow up all leads that we can and continue to gather those.
Any indication of a party at the home that night?
And this will be the last one, okay, I understand. Not that we know of, not at the home. We know that the other, let me get the names exactly right here. We know that Xana and
Chief Wright, John Webb with KHQ. On September 12th, there was a vandal alert that was sent out about a potential stabbing threat on Paradise Path. Does this have any connection with what we've seen so far?
Not that we know of it, but we're following up every lead. Every piece of information we get, we are following up to ensure that nothing has gone unturned. We want to have the individual identified, who is the suspect of this eventually. So we are literally looking into every aspect of everything.
And you guys have said repeatedly that there's no threat to the public, but we don't know who the suspect is. We don't know where he's at. How is there no threat to the public at this point?
Well, that's kind of an unknown. Like I said, we took the information that we had at the time, but we do need to be aware the individual is still out there, right? We need to be vigilant. We need to watch out for our neighbors. We're a community policing community. We've said that for years, and it's a community that watches out for each other. We need to continue to do that until we can close this off and make an arrest.
Why has there been such limited information over the past couple of days? I mean, we're almost 4 days into this. Why has it been so limited?
Yeah, it's a difficult, we have a lot of information coming in, and, we have tried to push out some information through press releases. But the reality is, I probably should have been standing here a day or so ago, but I'm here now. We're going to continue to be here. We're going to continue to give you the information we can. We care about this community. I care about this community. I've worked here for 27 years. I want this community to be the safest community around. So
the mayor's called it a crime of passion. Is there any indication that that's true?
We're looking into every aspect of this. I'm not going to stipulate whether it's one thing or another. We're going to continue to investigate until we have the facts, because really it's the facts that will drive what the cause of this is. And as we gather evidence, we'll get that. So. Okay.
One last question, if I could, Chief. Have we looked at any boyfriends or any ex-boyfriends, any spouses as a potential suspect?
I will tell you, we are looking at everyone. Every tip we get, every lead we get, there's no one that we're not going to talk to. There's no one we're not going to interview. There's no one that we're not going to look into. And we're going to do our due diligence. We're going to make sure that nothing goes unturned. Do everything we can with the assistance of all the resources we have to get a final answer.
Thanks, Chief Fry.
So there were, sorry, I'm Emma Epperly with the Spokes Interview. Hi. So there were other roommates who lived at that residence. Were the roommates home at the time of the attack?
There was other people home at that time, but we're not just focusing just on them. We're focusing on everybody that may be coming and going from that residence.
So since they were home, was it a hostage situation?
No, it was not.
And then they didn't call it into police. So were they injured?
They were not injured. But like I said, we're still following up with everybody that could have been in that area.
And how can you say it's a targeted attack if you don't have a suspect?
Like I said, we take the totality of the situation. We try to make the best bit of information we can with everything that comes in, and then we make our decision off of that. So at this time, I'm not going to expand upon that. But like I've said, we do have it out somewhere, and we are looking for that individual to solve this.
Hi, Rachel Sun, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I just want to clarify something you said earlier. Over the past couple of days, the information that we've been getting is there's not a threat to the public. Then earlier I heard you say you can't be assured that there is no threat. I just want to clarify what your stance is on that at this time.
So we still believe it's a targeted attack, but the reality is there's still out there who committed 4 horrible crimes. So I think we got to go back to there is a threat out there still, possibly. We don't know. We don't believe it's going to be to anybody else, but we all have to be aware of our surroundings and make sure that we're watching out for each other.
Okay, and then one other follow-up. I know you said when the call came in, it was for an unconscious person, and also that was a stabbing. It seems, just from an outside perspective looking in, like that would be not the first thing a person calling in would think.
You're right. But the report that we got was that it was an unconscious individual. It wasn't until our officers arrived on scene, went in to do caregiving check on the individual who was unconscious, that we found the scene that we found.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Heather Roberts with ABC News. Just to follow up on what she asked. So the other 2 roommates were there at the time of the attack?
All the information that we have from our investigation is that yes, they were.
Okay, but they were unhurt.
That is correct.
So is there any explanation as to why it took so long then for someone to call 911? You have surviving witnesses to an incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there. So, we don't know why that call came in at noon and not in the middle of the night. Would have we loved for that to have happened? Yes, but that's not how it took place. So that's why we're investigating everything still to try to pull all the pieces together.
Were they one of the people, were they the 911 caller?
At this point in time, I'm not going to divulge who our 911 caller is, just because I want to keep the integrity of the investigation at this point. Okay.
Okay. And last question, are you able to tell whether the same weapon was used on all 4 victims?
That's why we're having the autopsies done. The autopsy will confirm that and hopefully collect some evidence for us, even from those. That's why you do the autopsies, is to try to be thorough and try to gather more. So we'll leave that would probably be something that would come out later.
Okay.
Excuse me, Derek Shug, Fox News Digital. Was there anything missing in the home, or were the purses still there? Any robbery attempt, anything like that?
Nothing that we have identified. And I'm going to take about 2 more questions. All right.
Hi, I'm Tim with the Daily Evergreen. I was just wondering, were the 2 other individuals present at the home when police responded at noon?
Yes.
Okay.
Chief, if you don't mind elaborating a bit more on those 2 people. Was it 2 people? What have those people shared about the circumstances of that night, what they saw or didn't see?
Well, I'm not going to go into what they shared that night. Obviously, that's part of our investigation. That's part of the information that we're trying to build our complete story with. So as far as that goes, we're not going to go any further into what they know and what they don't know.
How many were there?
We believe 2.
Chief, have you looked into the social media accounts of all the different victims? We understand that one may have had an account linked to her Instagram account. Have you looked into those accounts? Have you seen any sort of threats made to any of the individuals?
So we are looking at all resources. We got, like I said, the Federal Bureau of Investigation helping us. We got our detectives, our forensic detectives looking into that. We're trying to pull this whole picture. We're looking at everything that we can look at, social media, etc. So to answer your question, yes, we are.